So what's the deal with Snoke? We first meet him in The Force Awakens, and he's just some giant hologram, like the Wizard of Oz. He doesn't get much screen time, but the sense is that he's a very powerful Sith Lord, who's taken Ben Solo, the son of Han Solo, and Leia, as his student. At the end of the film, after Kylo is defeated in battle, Snoke says that he is going to complete Kylo's training. This feels like a setup for a sequel, a movie about both Rey and Kylo training for the rematch. We have no idea who Snoke is or where he came from. Now, this question could be answered in Episode 9. It wouldn't be shocking if J.J. Abrams came up with something. Even if it's terrible, he might come up with something. Even after the events of this film, it's possible. Because, spoilers, Snoke dies. Now, Andy Serkis is well cast and does a good job in his brief moments as Snoke, but I'm certainly disappointed that someone as talented as him isn't given more to do. Serkis is one of the best in the business that can carry a film on his acting. He's done so with the Planet of the Apes films and his performance as Gollum in The Two Towers and Return of the King. He's one of the best. I mean, he's a terrific actor. You should be a fan of him like I am too. And he just feels wasted. This could have been anybody. I know he's the guy you go to for this kind of thing, but, just use him a little bit more. The worst thing about Snoke for me, though, is just how boring he is. We didn't need a stupid villain like this in the new Star Wars movies, and it feels like Rian Johnson felt the same way. Abrams introduced Snoke out of nowhere, and it felt like some cheap mystery box crap that he does with all of his movies. A way to get fans debating who this asshole was. And it worked. That's exactly what happened. In Last Jedi, Snoke makes fun of Kylo for losing to Rey. Now, didn't he just say he was going to complete his training a few hours ago? So he says that, and then goes on to make fun of Kylo. I guess that makes sense. Also, didn't Snoke tell Kylo to capture Rey in Force Awakens? He was told not to kill her, right? Maybe I remember it wrong, but I believe that was the whole point. Now, sure, he failed in that mission, but I never got the sense at the end of Force Awakens when I think he tells Hux even, go get Kylo because we have to complete his training. I never really got the sense from there that that meant that Kylo was going to come back and then Snoke was just going to yell at him for losing and tell him how terrible he was and talk about how he's broken because of killing his father and all of that. It didn't really feel organic to what happened at the end of the last movie. Now, that's just preference and an observation. That's not really a criticism, and I haven't got to watch the movies back to back yet. But it just, to me, the tone of it it's not seamless. So, hours later, after the ending of Force Awakens, after Rey beats Kylo, because that's the timeline of the movie, unless this film's non-linear and all of the events happening with Rey and Luke are happening before the First Order Resistance stuff, but it feels like it's happening at the same time because of the Force Skype stuff. So then Snoke creates the bond between Kylo and Rey, which is what I believe he says in the movie. So it's a way to trick Rey to come to the ship so he can find the location of Luke Skywalker. So Snoke's got this brilliant plan, right? He shows off his powers in the throne room sequence, and he can do anything. He smacks Rey around with her own lightsaber. I mean, it's crazy. Part of it comes off feeling way too similar to the throne room scene in Return of the Jedi. I mean, but it still kind of works. Snoke then tells Kylo to kill Rey. This will complete his training. So I guess at the end of Force Awakens, when he said he would complete his training, he meant that he would then connect Kylo with Rey through the Force, get them to fall for each other and hold hands, then get Rey to somewhat turn on Luke and come to Snoke's ship to see Kylo. Wow, this guy really thinks ahead. What an amazing plan. Man, if Snoke is this smart and this powerful, how can anyone beat the guy? Man, this is going to be the greatest Star Wars villain of all time. I mean, he just executed one of the greatest plans of all time. He has the Resistance outside of his ship getting blown up and killed, like the Emperor, but there's nobody to save them. He's got Rey trapped, no way out. Kylo's about to kill her, and he knows where Luke is. Man, Snoke is awesome. This is such a good scene. Snoke starts talking trash and celebrating his victory. We then see Rey's lightsaber getting moved by Kylo Ren, the lightsaber that's conveniently been placed beside Snoke because of the events in the throne room. I'm ready. This whole movie has subverted my expectations. Certainly this obvious moment, this obvious setup of Kylo tricking Snoke and killing him with Rey's lightsaber, it's just a trick. Another way to subvert my expectations. To shock me and do something new. Snoke goes from smart to a cartoon character? No, that's not going to happen. This can't be how he dies. Rian Johnson's too clever for this. He's going to kill Rey right now. This will be his Game of Thrones moment to retire on. This is the Ned Stark moment. I'm so excited. I'm in the theater, and then the lightsaber turns on, and Snoke dies. Wait, what? What? Then Kylo teams up with Rey and they fight off the guards, who are still fighting after they have nobody to fight for? So, what if the lightsaber hadn't been right beside Snoke? Would that plan have worked? Would Kylo have been able to trick him that way? Because I know it was that Snoke was reading Kylo's thoughts, and his thoughts were correct, but because of that, he didn't realize there was a lightsaber being turned right beside him. Man, Kylo's really lucky in this scenario, too. Thank God the lightsaber was there so he could do that. If it was anywhere else in the room that was more inconvenient, he might have not been able to kill Snoke. Wow, this is really well written. So, Snoke being this powerful and Kylo tricking him like this, yeah, great plot twist, I guess? Yay! Han and Leia always mention how Snoke turned their son against them in The Force Awakens, but in Last Jedi we find out it was more Luke's fault for turning his lightsaber on for a few seconds and thinking about killing his nephew. This is the same Luke who learned a valuable lesson in Return of the Jedi. After cutting off Vader's hand, he realizes what he has become and tosses his lightsaber. Luke will not let himself be turned and is willing to die for this. He's a Jedi like his father before him, and this completed his arc in the original trilogy. Never mind though, Luke really didn't learn anything and ended up making the same mistakes years later. Get it? It's all gray now and stuff. Snoke died because of his arrogance. This is the same thing that killed the Emperor. Both Luke and Rey say this to the main villain prior, and both die in a similar way with their second-in-command betraying them. In both movies, the heroes are being tortured by the main bad guy. The list just goes on and on. The minor differences are things like Palpatine slowly killing Luke himself while Snoke orders Kylo to do it. So I guess part of me is confused why so many people are saying this movie's so fresh and new, and a lot of people had issues with it, and they're upset about it not being another rehash like Force Awakens, that Rian Johnson tried to do new stuff in Star Wars. Well, the only reason I'm really confused about this is in moments like these with Snoke and several other moments in the film, all I'm seeing is rehashing. A lot of it, too. I guess instead of all the fan theories about Snoke, we got nothing. Sure, maybe Abrams will answer stuff in the next movie, and perhaps the new Johnson trilogy will connect it all somehow. Even so, the first two movies don't feel very connected to me. Getting some more information on Snoke would help, but I don't know if I would ever find him that compelling of a character in these first two films. All we have is a big scary bad guy who's set up as Palpatine 2.0. Then he ends up being a more boring version of that character, and he is just Palpatine 2.0. His death has less emotional impact because we don't have the dramatic payoff and tension with Vader and Luke. You know, that's him saving his son, and it was built up over 3 movies. We got to know those characters. His dialogue isn't as iconic in its perfect, over-the-top nature. His performance isn't as memorable. He didn't have that smooth balance of evil and fun. He was like some generic Marvel villain, a character who exists to die. He's just there to die, it feels like, so that other characters can move on to new adventures with other characters and friends of theirs that the writers actually care to write. You can see in this movie who Rian Johnson likes to write for and who he doesn't like to write for. It's like watching a TV show where the showrunners pick favorites. I mean, who needs a good villain? Things are morally complex now and everything is gray and deeper. Who cares if the First Order isn't scary and we're just repeating story beats from the previous Star Wars movies? In trying so hard to not be predictable, Last Jedi is somehow the exact opposite, being almost entirely predictable. Snoke isn't just bad because fans didn't get to have their theories come true, or that we're too stubborn to accept anything new. The problem with Snoke is that he's just poorly defined, and is only something that hurts the new movies. He doesn't add anything to it, and I feel Rian Johnson felt the same way. So I guess the main villain is Kylo now. Yeah, he's scary. Well, if you think about that shirtless scene, maybe they have a point. Snoke was kind of scary for the 10 seconds of screen time he had, but Kylo just is going to get his butt kicked by Rey in the next movie. Or maybe JJ will make him even stronger now because who cares about the power levels in these movies? I mean, it's not like Hux is much of a threat either. He's like some random guy in a costume that the other actors are making fun of. He's Russell Crowe in Les Miserables. So much of this movie feels like a second and third film slapped together. I'm not really sure what interesting story elements are left to tell. I guess we can enjoy seeing Leia die off camera and Poe making love to BB-8. Despite a lot of the jokes, the funniest scene of the movie is seeing Snoke's dead body. I was wondering while I was watching the movie if the guards were actually the Knights of Ren, now fighting against their old friend Kylo, as some kind of wall between him and Snoke. Now, I don't think that's what it is, but there was part of me thinking one of those characters was going to use the Force in the following battle as a way to really surprise us. Part of me thought Snoke would do this to screw with Kylo, and maybe even as a way to control him. We know that Kylo left with several students that Luke was training. Where did they go? I guess we'll find out in the next movie, but I don't know, it could have been useful. In my opinion. That's just my opinion, though. I know this kind of stuff doesn't really happen in Star Wars movies, but at this point I was hoping for something more than another lightsaber duel. Sure, it was filmed in a way that we haven't seen before, but I wanted more dramatic tension outside of the two characters we know aren't going to die. It's just them taking out a bunch of bad guys. I don't really care that much. I know the scenes about Kylo and Rey, but that wasn't enough for me. Now, let's make things worse. Let's talk about a Snoke fan theory for Episode 9. And I hope this theory is true because it's so terrible it would be awesome. Now, the theory is that Snoke has reached such a high level of force projection that he's not actually physically there in the whole throne room sequence. He just has a force presence inside this body. And once that body dies, that force presence is then transferred to another body, which Snoke will then use in Episode 9 to return. I guess it's kind of like the Horcruxes in the Harry Potter series. Now, this is something I could see Abrams doing, and it's not like there isn't room for that theory, especially considering what Luke does in the movie and Leia. So, Snoke could have that power, but I still think it's silly. It sounds like real fan-fake stuff, but don't rule that out. Now, I've been doing this series for a while now. This is my 4th video on these things in The Last Jedi that I didn't think really worked in the movie. And, you know, I know some people are getting mad thinking I'm jumping on the hate wagon, but I'm just expressing my opinion and making some observations. I'm really not trying to get in fights with people. If you like the movie, that's fine. And I don't really have many of these left. Maybe one more video, 2 more videos at most, and then I'm going to be done. So, don't worry, people. You don't have to deal with this forever. I guess the question is, though, have I learned anything? Only that human beings are divided into mind and body. The mind embraces all the nobler aspirations, like criticism and good storytelling. But the body has all the fun. The important thing, I think, is to not be bitter. You know, there could be more to Snoke. I don't think that he's terrible. I don't even think Rian Johnson's terrible. I think that the worst you can say about him is that basically, he's an underachiever. After all, there's worse things in life than disappointment. If you've ever spent an evening with a Zack Snyder fan, you know exactly what I mean. The key here is to not think of The Last Jedi as an end, but as a more effective way of cutting down your future expenses. Regarding Disney, you know, what can you say? It's not the quantity of hit movies you have, it's the quality. On the other hand, if the quantity drops below 1 every 8 months or so, I would definitely look into it. Well, that's about it for me, folks. Goodbye.